that everyone from
It's
your
like
side?
Kim's head has just become a computer screen.
Yes.
It's ergonomic.
But it feels better. It's okay, I can still see her. Yes. Why are you not letting me? Good morning. Glad to see everybody again. Couple of new faces. Gotcha.
We have to have the official authorization to speak.
Well, there's a lag. I'm going from here.
No worries.
Huh?
No worries.
Yeah.
Sylvia, I'll send you Houston's contact info. So
Okay.
then from now on, he can be added whenever you.
Send the, great, thank you.
Appreciate it.
That's so cool.
Thank you.
It's portable, huh?
It is much better on my neck. By like a lot.
That's what I said. It's that lag. Can you see the wheel? No, it's on mine.
Everybody's pushing the microphone
Yes.
further and further away from them.
I was like, I don't want my typing to be too loud.
I just don't want anything under my breath being recorded.
Why don't you just unplug that one? Actually, this one.
Otherwise all we hear is. Got the 958 reboot?
Yeah, it's done.
No, I'm not. Yeah, you did.
Oh, you're kidding.
No, I can't.
Oh.
Now you can see how it looks.
Okay.
Good? All right. Again, good morning. Welcome to another negotiation session. Hopefully this will be short and sweet, right? I thought today we would start just by reintroducing everybody, a couple of new faces. We have a couple of new faces as well. And then we have some ground rules that we'd like to go over with you. I think she sent you a copy of them. And I think also today we will be prepared to go over, maybe articles that we can push to the side and wouldn't have anything to address. Maybe go over some of our, primary goals, something like that. That work for you?
Yeah, I think we have some questions also just about how long y'all are looking at consideration for contract length. And yeah, we'll definitely be ready to talk about articles that we're comfortable with leaving as is and
Okay.
conceptually some other articles and even be able to present some later in the afternoon too if we're ready for that.
All right, sounds good. Well, I will start. I'm Sarah Griffin. I know quite a few of you. I actually got to meet Houston in January, so that's nice. I am the interim labor relations director, and have been in that position since August. So our last contract, many of you saw me. Prior to that, I was outside counsel doing the same thing with Lowell's firm, and I look forward to a nice, amicable negotiation sessions. We usually have really good luck with you guys, and Selena's very cooperative and respectful, and we intend to be the same. So with that, I will have Sylvia introduce herself.
I'm Sylvia Flores. I know some of you. I retired from the city about 3 years ago after doing 30 years. But I decided to come back and help out since this is very critical. And my mom told me that I needed to really take y'all into account, so.
And you've also been bargaining for most of that time period,
Yes,
pre-retirement.
yes.
Sarah also worked for one of the great city attorney people in the world in her early career before she went to Illinois. Harvey Hardy, who was kind of a mentor of mine when I moved to San Antonio. So anyway, she had the right kind of, images and aspirations. So it's a privilege to work with these two people that I've known for a pretty long time. I'm Lowell Denton. I'm from San Antonio. I'm a city government lawyer. I've been in municipal law since 1980, and have done labor negotiations, fire, police, and EMS here, since it's unusual, actually, in terms of a bargaining unit around the state of Texas. In addition to that, I've got 4 kids, 9 grandkids, a bunch of Angus cows, a charter boat in Florida, and way too much to do, but it's a privilege to be here and work with y'all. I know that y'all probably have way too much to do too. Life's difficult to keep up with these days. So anyway, I would like to encourage each of you to say just a little bit about who you are outside of the professional context that brings you to this table today. I always think that's good to kind of get to know each other a little bit at a personal level without meddling in anybody's privacy. So glad to be here and appreciate what y'all do.
I'm Teresa Gardner, Chief of Staff for the EMS Department. Hello again. I think I've lost count of how many times I've been here, but it's always an honor and a privilege to be here to work through the contracts with everyone. So I'm glad we're here doing it again. I got a 12-year-old and a 26-year-old. And you would think that there would be some differences between that. There's really not. They're both girls, and they both are pretty much high maintenance. Just so you know, if you have kids that are growing up, it really, I would like to say it gets better. It just gets more expensive. So I spend my time really chasing them around. I have a 12-year-old that's interested in volleyball and music and all kinds of things now. So we spend a lot of time doing that. And I like to travel when I get the opportunity to do so. So, yeah, that's about it.
And I think you were 16 the first time I bargained with you.
That's very kind and generous. No.
Good morning. My name's Wes Hopkins. I'm a first-time caller, but a long-time listener. I've been bargaining before. I'm excited to be here. I have an amazing niece who just turned 17. She just went to prom, and she just got accepted into Texas State. So I'm a very proud uncle, having a really good time watching her kind of get into that adulthood part of that. So good to see everybody.
Good morning, everybody. Carlos Ledesma. I'm the EMS Assistant Director. I oversee the administrative side of EMS. Been with the city 16 years. This is like my 6th department, I believe, or 7th. I lost count. I have 3 kids, which have 12-year-old twins and a 13-year-old, who's going to be 14-year-old. 2 of those are girls. So like Chief Gardner says, they only get more expensive. They're all preteen now.
Wow, okay, tough act to follow. Ben Phillips, City Legal, works with y'all in the department. Most of you guys don't want to actually meet me in professional context. I'm kidding. But seriously, yeah, you don't want to meet me. Have a lot of respect for what you guys do. I've seen it, and it's just, yeah, it's an honor to work with you guys and to be here. I have 2 kids as well, 6 and 3, so they're a handful.
Let me jump back in. We do have some people who are not here today. From HRD, we have Rebecca Kennedy, who's the interim director. We have Nathan Brown, who's the assistant director, and Matthew Schutz, who's in civil service side of it. I also want to introduce Bernard Parks, who is our tech And y'all have met Erica, I take it, correct? So she's your entry to the wonderful world of bargaining. Go ahead.
Good morning, I'm Melissa Paul, new to the bargaining team. Professionally, I've been with Austin Travis County about 16 years, and my current assignment is field command. Personally, I'm a mom of a soon-to-be 22-year-old who is just finished her bachelor's at Texas State and is going to start her master's in the fall, yay.
Yay.
And then I also have two younger, 11 and 8. So correct, they don't get any less expensive, it just gets worse. They're all girls, so I feel the pain. And other than that, I'm just excited to be here. And first time, so I'll just keep my mouth shut other than that.
My name is Lena Shia. I am president of the Austin EMS Association and have been president since 2019. I was on the bargaining team in 2017 and 2018 as well. And I have 520 children, so.
My name's Houston Tower. I'm the general counsel for the Austin EMS Association. I'm also new to this bargaining team. I've been a licensed attorney for a little over 10 years now. I was at the legislature for the last 10 years, working as chief of staff and legislative director for a few different members. Previously, I worked with CLEAT as a staff attorney for them, which is how I got introduced to the EMS Association, representing them as well. I have a 2-year-old, and his name is Dane. He's awesome. Ben and I have had the opportunity, he's had the opportunity to hear him in the background while we've been talking on the phone before. I'm weary at what y'all say about it getting more expensive, because it's already pretty expensive as it is. Also, my brother was firefighter paramedic, and I have a few other first responder types in my family, which has brought me here and have a passion for the folks that I represent, and just look forward to working with everybody.
Cool, I guess my turn. Hi, I'm Kim Griffith. I've been with Austin EMS for about 8 years. I'm a captain, and I work in community health right now. As you can see, I'm also the secretary and general note taker pretty much wherever I go. I don't have kids, but I have 2 dogs and 3 cats, so that's about as close as I get, and those still get expensive too.
You did have a nice press coverage the other day. That was really nice.
Oh yeah, for
that was great.
Zyprexa. Yes, I'm really excited about that.
My name's Tyler Green. I've been with the department employed since 2016, previously as an explorer here since I was 13. Pretty much grew up here. On my time off, usually it's spending time with my 2-year-old daughter, going outside, just hanging out with her and watching her grow up. That's pretty much me in a nutshell.
I'm John Kalinowski. I've been a clinical specialist with the department for 6 years. I have 5- and 7-year-old girls at home who are unattended, but they're dogs. So that's all I got.
I'm James Monks. I'm a clinical specialist currently. Been with the department for 6 years, and I have 2 boys, both teenagers, 18 and 14, and then I have 2 dogs and a cat. And that's about it.
I'm Phil Barquer. I've been with the department for 6 years as well. Right now I'm assigned to Special Operations Rescue side of the house. Also the CASMED team as well. That's about it. Kenny, you're up.
All right. I'm Kenny Pales. I'm a clinical specialist. I have been with EMS since 2014. I'm assigned to the community health team. Specifically, I do mental health crisis response right now. And I also have a beautiful 4-year-old girl at home that loves to chase squirrels, and a wonderful wife that I like to spend a lot of time with. Very much value my time with my wife when I'm not at work, and that's my personal life.
Hope she doesn't catch one of those squirrels, man. They bite hard.
The best thing is she never catches squirrels. So we let her go. We'll let her do it. Yeah.
My name's Lindsay Rutledge. I'm a medic in the field and a clinical specialist in communications. I've been with the department 7 years and EMS 10. Married 12 years. I have a 10-year-old son and a 7-year-old girl. I love to hunt and fish on the side.
Rock and roll. So we are here, and and ready to forge ahead. We have set up a proposed set of ground rules, and I would like to go through, without being too tedious, on those and give you some kind of philosophical perspective on what we would like to do and why. Give you an opportunity to think about that and come back in response. Our team was, first Sylvia and Sarah and I, and then our team at large were kind of trying to reconstruct what we did the last time. We didn't have formal ground rules the last time. I'm not sure our recollection of the history about that was perfect, but we think that this would probably complement and maybe even accelerate our process a little bit. And so I do want to make sure that you understand the spirit that we're putting this forward. Number one is just a recitation of what we're doing here. Number two, the collective bargaining statute, which we're not under, imposes a duty of good faith bargaining. It comes by analogy from the National Labor Relations Act, which is the United States historical model for labor negotiations. And so, in a technical legal sense, our respective clients, parties, whatever, the City of Austin as the employer, and your association as the sole bargaining agent for your group, don't really have a duty to bargain in good faith. We think it's appropriate to have this in the ground rules because that's why we're here. And we intend to bring our best to the table and to listen to you and to understand what you have to say and the data that you bring us and the stories that you tell us about your members and their lives and why they are asking for the employer to do the things that are important to you. And we just expect the same in return. And so this may not be anything that's really in controversy, but I just wanted to be forthright about the good faith part. Number three is really about the process. It's no secret the last time that we had some frustration with a bargaining environment that really was not focused at the bargaining table for at least parts of the session that we were going through. We would like to have less communications at the political level, communications through press and media. My experience with bargaining is that if we come here and we are committed to listen to each other and to make a deal here, that we make the most progress. I'm a realist. I have been through many bargaining cycles in Austin, and they run from one end of the spectrum to the other in terms of what the ultimate outcomes were. For years, of course, on the police side, every contract we took to the city council passed, and it wasn't even controversial. Obviously, them days are long past. And so what we are providing here, the statute says that you have your bargaining team, that you have the right to designate, your members have designated the association as your sole bargaining agent, and you decide who you bring to the table, and the employer can't fiddle with that. It also gives the city manager and the department head the right to field their bargaining team and to have bargaining at this location. And so we are proposing that both of us respect the right to have our bargaining teams, that we have our discussions here. You'll see in a minute there's a later provision about media contact and so forth. But we're asking you to make a commitment that we're not going to be bargaining outside of the designated teams. We have added to this paragraph, which I think has been circulated in the past with police and fire units, and you've probably seen this in prior versions of ground rules, but we've added this at the end because we're not trying to be, ridiculous here. In the context of government, we have many communications with people, and we're not going to be accusing you of bargaining with somebody if your city council member asked you for a report on, what is this, and have y'all talked about that yet, or those kind of things. And so we're talking about practical common sense rules in terms of these commitments. And we just like you to take a look at that because we think it would be helpful. The reality is if we do our best and try to make a deal and maintain a relationship that facilitates that, we may fail. There may be aspects of what we're trying to do here on either side that may fail. And ultimately, of course, that ends up with a political disposition one way or the other. But during the bargaining cycle, we think that that's the best way to go at the problem. Number 4, we want to talk to you about how many members. I think there have been pre-discussions about that. And that we focus on having a cohesive group that continues to be educated and know what's going on and to show up and participate, contribute to the discussion. If people can't make it and we go forward and have our meetings anyway, we don't want people on our side or your side coming back later on and trying to unwind something that got accomplished. So that one I think is otherwise self-explanatory. 6 is just about replacing people if that needs to happen because something develops in the life of one of your initial designated members or ours. We follow the rules that are in the agreement about ABL requests and approval. And I skipped 7. I think this is really important, and so I didn't mean to skip it. I actually think the first time that I ever participated in, kind of mutually came up with the idea of using subcommittees was in Austin. It was a long time ago. But there are things that really are best developed in a subcommittee environment to where you can get data, you can have other people come in, you can perhaps have, more open discussions for what if this and what if that without really any authority to bind the other side. IBB bargaining, methodology calls that brainstorming, to where you get to say whatever you want and you don't have to get penalized for it later on. It's kind of like mediation in the litigation context of where people can show up in the room and have free conversations and you can't cross-examine them later at trial on what they said in the mediation session. And so I think both of us probably have ideas about some of the issues we want to talk about here that will fit into the subcommittee model. So that's why that's in there. The next paragraph on process, we haven't engaged historically and formalized IBB, but we've been trained in that. Everybody knows how to do it. I think we know how to shift into those kind of techniques and strategies. We're certainly willing to discuss how that's going to work with you if you have any concerns about that paragraph. We're talking about establishing some cutoff dates today. We want some reasonable timeframes. We'd like to be under some pressure to move forward and get a deal done, but not unrealistic. So that everybody brings their issues to the table. Sometimes the project has a tendency to grow and grow and grow if we don't have deadlines. So number 3, I think this is no different than what we did the last time, even though we didn't have formalized ground rules. So look through this. This is just the Austin version of making our bargaining process available to the community. Even though the statute does not require that, the statute actually says that the things that we exchange and so forth and so on don't get to be public until it's going to the city council. That's never been the Austin way. And so we think this is well structured. I think it's consistent with the last time, so I'm not going to go through any of those particulars unless y'all have questions or issues with them. I think you know all about the recording and so forth and so on. Caucuses are private, obviously, and are not in public. Nobody's going to disclose any of that information if it comes into their, into their possession or whatever. And it just says there, it recites, it's not intended that the process of negotiation is inhibited. The statute, I think, was originally written under the theory that if the parties have this kind of mediation environment where they can be open and candid and so forth, and don't have to be, like looking at a TV camera, it might be better. But we're used to this, and I don't think that's going to be a problem. Scheduling is pretty much the same logistics as we had before. And after we set a time period, we can extend negotiation sessions to longer periods of time. I believe it's typically been our role that we work together pretty effectively in being ready for the issues that are here. Some days we'll show up and we'll be done by noon or 1 o'clock. Some days we need to work until 6 or 7 in the evening. And so we're ready to do whatever it takes, and to show up and to be ready. We do want people to be available, you know, through the business day, which is what number 4 articulates. Information and data sharing is the, I guess, the process of exchanging information. We want to make sure, we fully expect to give you everything that we have to respond timely to your request for information and data. If there's things that you get from us and you think there's something missing or that there's something that we're hiding, the last thing we want to happen is for your team to have some lack of confidence or reservations about the sufficiency, the comprehensive nature of what we're doing and so forth. We're not going to hide the ball intentionally or deliberately. And I know from experience that y'all are not the least bit bashful about saying, you know, come on, this is not what we asked for. So that's good. That's what we want to do. Well, single contact person is just to make sure that works effectively and there's not confusion in that process. I don't think we had any problems the last time with making that work. We will try on our side and ask you to do the same to make sure that if there's data that y'all are going to be telling us about, that we get it early if possible, so that everybody can kind of study it and do their homework, and it's just more efficient that way. On press and media inquiries, the simple thing about this paragraph is if we are asked for information by press or media, we're going to talk to you about what we're going to say before we say it. We're not going to go out unilaterally to the media and make speeches and call y'all names or question your motives or try to, you know, tell somebody you don't understand what you're talking about or that your data's wrong or that there's something else wrong with the way you're approaching this process. And in my view, that's just a matter of respect. You know, when I'm trying a lawsuit, I've tried lawsuits against some really good, mean lawyers on the other side, and a lot of them are still my really good friends, you know, because we treated each other right and we both did our jobs, you know, but nobody cheated. And so that's the way we see that. You know, we're going to be forthright. There are times when we have an obligation to provide information to the public, and that doesn't mean making a speech or spinning things our way, trying to do something that's contrary to what you have on the table or the points you're trying to make. And we're asking for the same thing in return. Any comments on that?
I would just say, obviously, all of these are only true until impasse. You know, the purpose of the whole ground rules is that while we're here, we're here. We're not elsewhere. At impasse, all bets are off, right?
So that's pretty much the way that works. Post-negotiation process, we've included this in here. I don't think in my history with EMS this has been as important as it sometimes has been on the fire and police side. But these contracts are complicated, and you know, your entire membership, although in the Austin framework where your members can, you know, see this, watch it, read it, whatever, it's a lot easier for them to keep up with what's going on. When we end up with a labor agreement, it is primarily, obviously, your responsibility and prerogative to educate your members and to convince them that you've done a good job and that the deal you bring them may not be everything they want, but it's something that they ought to support. And this is just about a process to where we collaborate once we have a deal to try to get both of our sets of constituents to pass it. So that's pretty much it. And we'd like your review and study, and we'd be glad to talk to you about that after you do.
Yeah, let me just add one more thing. When you look at the public release portion of this, let me tell you how we've interpreted that with all of our unions. When we get a request for public information, be it from, you know, the newspaper, an individual, even council offices, if they say, can we have a copy of what was at the table today? Well, the way we do it, we put it up on the screen. It's been out there, that's public. If we have the courtesy to give you something the night before to review it prior to our discussion, we don't release that. We release it once it's public in this room. So that's kind of timing-wise how we do it.
Right. Thanks. Good clarification. So that's pretty much what we have on the ground rules part. We're going to go back. We're open to hear from y'all about your initial reaction to this or what you see as your vision for the bargaining process or cycle that we can talk about. We're going to go back and look at our no change article list.
And dates. And dates.
And then we'll be back. And so I'll turn it over to you, Selena.
So last year, we notionally talked about ground rules decided that we probably wouldn't agree to them, and so just skipped right by. Did you ask fire and police to sign these ground rules last year?
They not only signed them, that's what these are based off of.
They're identical.
Not identical, but highly similar.
These are a little looser than theirs, honestly, because fire, of course, is collective bargaining. So some of those are mandated under that, and there's repercussions for violating the ground rules in fire. Here, there are not repercussions. It's a symbolic, let's try to play nice, more than, so it is a little different for them. And they're not identical to police either, but if anything, yours are looser than theirs.
And those are public, we don't have a problem getting them for you.
Yeah, we can give you both of those.
I just, it's hard. We just did this last year, so a lot of these memories are fresh. And, my first recollection of any media getting involved, and just so y'all know, like, I have had many media inquiries about when are we going to start and, what is our opening and all this other stuff, and we haven't responded to any of those. But my first recollection last time is, there was some media interest in the city's opening offer to us. We responded, and then the city sent out a pretty inflammatory, derogatory press release out of nowhere, and we had not done that. All we had done was respond to the media, so it is a little difficult to have that memory very fresh and take in good faith that we're trying to operate and at the table and everything. So I just want to put that in context because I can't help but have that be very glaring and searing in my memory. But we'll take a look at this and we'll definitely respond. And yeah, I'd love a copy of what police and fire agreed to.
Yeah, and I would just say, I would think if anything, that would solve your angst over it.
And I'm not sure that it would completely. And while I am new to this, and honestly, Law, I would look forward to learning quite a bit from you during this process. Whenever I look at the such things as communications with City Council, things along those lines, it is y'all's duty to report directly to them, and so it is for us to say that because I absolutely respect that we need to talk here, we need to get to know each other, because that is the best way for us to come to where y'all really understand the human impact of what this negotiation process has behind it, not just for our members, but for the public at large. And so we do want to respect that so we can all feel comfortable talking to one another in an open way. And so, when it comes to that, I think that there should be one, to say that there's a complete prohibition on unilateral press releases. I find I have issue with that, just because we do need to make sure that, one, we are keeping the public informed as a matter of transparency. And in the past, the association has been burned through that process. And there's, by no means do we want to make this a political thing. The city, we've seen that already with other negotiations, and that's not the point of this. The point of this is to make sure that we help our members, and we have the ultimate goal of increasing public safety and making it much more sound, and that's how we want to do that. But to put a much less some type of unilateral prohibition on that, I think that's something we could maybe discuss the content of what type of things, like if we're in discussions, maybe certain details and things that are not public. I understand that, but to prohibit thoughts and opinions of our association, that part I think goes a little too far to just completely prohibit that. That is something that at least the public should have an opportunity to know exactly what's going on and have full transparency during this negotiation process. Obviously limited to a certain extent, so that we all feel comfortable speaking freely, but a complete prohibition, I think, goes beyond what is reasonable for this.
But we will take a look, and also, it would be helpful if we got these a little sooner so we could review in the caucus as well. I know that, I didn't even know that we were going to actually see ground rules, so, yeah.
So let me thank you, Selena, first of all, for your candor about that, and I regret the fact that you have a searing recollection of something that you thought was unfair and not appropriate. we will certainly revisit the context of doing that. My reaction to that is, that being the case, I think you should have proposed this ground rule to make us behave if that's what really needed to happen. And I don't think the prohibition is absolute. Houston, if I may call you the first name.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you will look at the way we have structured the media, under the statute, of course, the city manager and the department director have a bargaining team, and our charge is to take the city council labor agreement with a recommendation that they pass it. The city team actually doesn't report to the city council individually. The Open Meetings Act, as you know, doesn't allow us to have conversations with the council about contract strategy and what our bargaining positions are and so forth, because that would have to all be in public sessions anyway. The only thing that is discussed with the council in the executive sessions are legal issues subject to the act. And Austin, frankly, has an extremely tight set of criteria for doing that. Maybe other city governments are not quite so tight in terms of what goes on in the executive session, but it truly is limited to legal advice and analysis in the labor agreement context. There is no question that we have aides asking us questions, and we have information that council members are directly seeking. I can't control by these ground rules whether or not the mayor or some council member that may be for or against your group is going to make public statements. They're public officials and they can do that. And so the realities of the environment, we're not trying to change those. We're just trying to have those discussions here. And I would merely urge you to think about the fact that if we come back to the bargaining table and there is a resentment or an objection or a complaint on either side, all we're saying is, let's bring it to the table and have a discussion about it, instead of taking it to council members or to the media or making a press release about it and then taking it here. Maybe it ends up public later on. Many times in these relationships with other negotiators, including Mr. Dietz that worked for y'all last time, we just had a phone call about this, and sometimes the phone call frankly ended up being, we've got to respond to this, and we think you broke the rule. Okay, well, we get over that. So that's really that's the sense that we're talking about. We're planning on playing fair, and if we misbehaved before, we're planning on not doing it this time.
And I 100% respect that, and I want us to have the spirit of that is what I intend.
And I apologize for the surprise, Selena, that you just indicated, that you wish you could have seen this sooner. I'm hoping we can take a look at it and decide whether it's a good idea in spite of that, and then kind of go forward structurally about how we're going to do things.
Yeah, and
on the rest of the contract and the scheduling.
Yeah, absolutely. I know not on this side we don't intend any type of foul play, calling out things before we bring them to you, because that's not in the spirit of proper negotiation. We just want to make sure that we would not be violating, and while there may be no repercussions, in a legal sense, we want to make sure that we are not violating any agreement between us if in the event that history repeats itself. And in that event, we don't want to say, oh, well, y'all broke the rules, because if that happens, like you said, there's no repercussions. And so while, I think that we should be able to at least, with respect to the process, be able to speak to our constituency, which is, not only just the members of our association, but the people that the members serve. And during this process, public safety is of paramount concern, and if we need to know, that if the public needs to know what our members are going through, then that should be something we should be able to do without fear of violating a rule. And while we absolutely respect the process of making sure that this is done in a manner that can build trust, we still need to build that trust, and the trust was not broken by the association previously. And so that is the issue that we find with it, is that we are trying to make sure that this is going to be a fully two-way road, equal playing ground on that. And so the trepidation on this side would be because of the past, and those things are, can be difficult to overcome.
But they have to be.
That, yes, they do.
And the key tenet of interest-based bargaining is it's not about people, personalities, or history. It's about what the interests and the issues are today.
And those issues directly stem from history. And so there has to be that involvement. So we cannot ignore what has happened in the past and just pretend it's a clean slate, because it's not.
Right, and I would just add that that's one of the reasons that ground rules are good. I've been bargaining since 1999. The only time I've not had ground rules is when Craig Dietz was the actual attorney on the other side. And he's always verbally agreed to it, just didn't want to sign it. For whatever reason, that was his personal preference. None of the other attorneys, Ron DeLorde, any of the other attorneys in any of the other cities, counties, states that I've worked in, I mean, I find these helpful. They find these helpful. It puts us all in a framework where we know what we're doing, where we know that if you guys come out with a statement and we come back with something, let's stop. Let's just put out a joint statement. We had productive negotiations today, or we had some contentions at the table, but it's a joint statement. That's the theory behind it.
Yeah.
So, think that through. We'll send you the police.
Yeah.
We'll send you the fire.
It would
so
be
you
different.
can look at it.
It would be different, because a lot of the things that I've heard in your discussion, Houston, are absolutely true if we were doing this bargaining process like Meet and Confer is done in many locations where it really has no public oversight. But the public has access to everything that goes across this table.
Yeah, and I understand that. And it's not a matter of not agreeing to rules. But it is that we want to make sure that, one, EMS's voice is heard, and not just on, for the 10 to 15 minutes at a time you get through a streaming service. And we're not trying to say that we're going to go out and bash anyone or anything like that. It is just a matter of being able to openly discuss priorities of the association, and to be able to speak freely in that. And it's not to take aim at anyone or anything along those lines. It is just a matter of being able to use the voice of the association and to be able to speak about the problems or just the issues that they face and the membership faces. And that's all we're discussing, because I think that we need to make sure that these folks are heard, because there's a lot of issues going on with some of our membership, and they need to be heard, because it is of paramount importance to the city and public safety that our membership is heard. And that is all I'm expressing, and not trying to do anything underhanded or take shots in the media or anything along those lines. And it's not about not adhering to rules, because I believe setting expectations is key to a proper negotiation. And so we just want to make sure that these expectations are set within what is comfortable within our limits.
We appreciate the engagement very much. Look forward to hearing back from you about that. And I think we're hoping to have the city manager at one of the early meetings, are we not?
I think we're going to try to arrange the next one so that he can be here. Yeah, well, so let's look at.
And I know that you've had some communication with Jesus already, and I know from my experience with him a long time ago, as well as recent discussions, the commitments that we're proposing to make here, that he will honor those.
And, we've only operated under City Manager Cronk, and so that was many, many years of negotiations. And so it is definitely an adjustment. And I just remember previously, what we heard is that, well, it was the city who put out the press release, not the bargaining team. And so it's just, there are ways that even if we had these ground rules, that wouldn't have actually been effective for us.
I would fully expect for you to talk to Mr. Garza about this issue.
Yeah. Okay, we'll take a look.
Thank you.
Before we go, should we just talk about what information we should go ahead and share? You want to send over some dates and some articles that y'all are comfortable with as is? We don't have to do that right now, but if you just want to email over some dates and.
We can do that. I thought you guys could go back and caucus for a bit, and then we could do that publicly so that the public knows about our dates. But if you want me to send the dates that we're looking at so that we can just kind of jointly agree to whatever works for both teams, we can do that as well.
Okay.
Same with the
articles, and then we can discuss.
Yeah, we'll send those, and then we'll come back and discuss them. Perfect.
Okay, and then also, do y'all have an idea for the length of the contract? Because that also kind of shapes some of the articles as well that we're looking for.
Contract term.
We are open at this point, 3 years, 4 years.
Okay.
5 years, 10 years.
We're good with 10 years.
Yeah, we don't have a
Okay.
a mandated cut of specifically 3 or 4. That's generally but we're not necessarily trying to line them up
Okay.
anymore, or, so, I think we do not have our PFM study back yet, so once we get that back and get into the actual proposal things, I think we'll
Mhm.
look at our, there's the 5-year forecast, et cetera, so we'll take a look at that. The last person who I didn't name, who is also on our team, is Katie Stewart, so she'll be working with Ed Benino on
Yeah.
that.
So y'all do have a pay study this year?
We will have a new updated one, yes.
Okay.
We don't have it back yet, so, but as per the ground rules and as we always do, prior to giving our proposal or response to your proposal, we will share the PFM study with you, absolutely.
Will Katie require nachos again this session?
Katie requires a lot.
We have that as a contingency.
And I was derelict in not mentioning that Roxana Pettis-Stevens, that you know from the last session, will also be working from my firm. She'll probably be here more than I am. She had a little brief illness, and so she's not here today. And so that's the rest of our team, city team complement.
And we have only one other person who's not here, Daniel Owens. He's in paramedic school today.
Okay, so it's 10 to 11 right now. We can send you the dates and the articles. When do you want to come back and meet?
Do you want to just meet after lunch, and then we can?
We can do that. You want to say 1? Let's do it.
Awesome.
Perfect. scoot Sylvia to the back row.
I didn't behave, so.
And Sylvia, will you use my association email?
Okay.
Yeah, it's just easier for me to access
Okay.
than my.
Do you have that one that says president?
Are y'all all here and ready?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
That's it. Where do you want to start?
So we'll just talk briefly about ground rules. So I don't even think that in 2022 we even saw them. I think it's probably because of y'all's history with Craig that you knew that he doesn't like to agree to them. So we never even saw this copy. And so we just want to take some time with it. And we did talk to Thomas, and I know that y'all had said that APA and AFA had signed them. I think Thomas said that they had not signed them ultimately in last time, so.
Yeah, I talked to him too. We didn't sign any TAs with them.
Yeah.
We put everything in kind of like a weird, different thing, but we had them agreeing to it on February 23rd. I talked to him, he's like, yeah, I just got a text from Selena too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they did agree to them. It's just a matter of, it wasn't a signing situation.
I gotcha. Okay. So we'll just take some time with them, and then we might just agree to them and not sign anything else. But we just want to take some time with them. And we sent over some articles that we also did not have any substantive changes with. And I think a good first start is just to discuss some of the articles that y'all didn't have, and if y'all want to, because I was just curious why 1 through 4 weren't included, and are those just because those are kind of sometimes ones that we leave to the end, or if y'all actually had some changes for those?
Yeah, we almost always leave
1 through 4.
definitions till
Okay.
the end, but the other ones just kind of go with it depending on what arises. So, yeah, we didn't have anything huge that was glaring at us from those that's going to be a surprise or anything like that. They were just kind of a hold on those as
Okay.
opposed to an issue with those.
I gotcha, okay. Yeah, we just wanted to double check on that.
Now, let me remind me real quick, 1 through 4, just definitions and what else?
It's the preamble, definitions, recognition, and
Gotcha.
non-discrimination.
Okay, but not term. Terms later, right?
Term is later.
Okay, mighty good.
And so beyond that, we spent more time just discussing the ground rules and looking at the comparison to APA and AFA. So we don't actually have those articles, the other ones, quite ready for y'all. Unless if y'all have anything you want to show us, otherwise we can caucus and come back, or and wrap up a few of those articles, or it's up to y'all if y'all have other things that you think we can be productive.
I think what I would like to say on the ones that we did send you is depending, I want to hold those out for a few weeks just to make sure those are all things that we don't intend to
Sure.
bring anything on. But if you
Want to
if
present
something carries over in one way or another. So I think if we have a general list and we can kind of put it on a status sheet as we believe these are off the table. But I think finalizing them off the table, we should
Sure,
wait a
sure,
little
sure.
bit.
Okay.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think it's good just to see where, y'all
Yeah.
are at generally and where we're at generally. And a lot of ours, it's kind of hard because we don't have large substantive changes. And so, we had previously no changes, small changes, larger changes.
Yeah.
And so some of ours are also not quite that we need massive changes on.
Okay.
Some of that's like correcting language and whatnot, just basic terms of gender pronouns, things along those lines and stuff like that.
And I would,
Not
I
substantive.
think that what we can do is, if we have cleanup only, we can put those in the no new category.
And dates only, that sort of
Right.
thing. And I know I did, I will say I promised Roxy that I would give her a chance to go through and her grammatical changes that she wanted to put in last time. I'm like, we're in the middle of negotiations. We're not doing this now. If you want them, we're doing it at the beginning.
Yeah.
So I've promised her she could at least take a stab at her nuanced grammatical changes. So they're not going to be substantive if they're in these articles, but they would
Okay.
be like that.
And then, do y'all have a format that you would like us to edit the articles? Because I think last time y'all sent us native copies that you wanted us to edit from, or how would y'all like to?
Yeah, so, and I've sent you the Word document from the 2022, correct?
Mhm, yes.
Okay, so, the way we prefer to do it is to show any changes from the current contract language in what you propose. If you're responding, then if it's not you know, there's some articles where you just can't leave somebody else's changes and say not accepted.
Mhm.
You have to just say, this is just our proposal, it doesn't mark against yours. But when it's easy to do and readily apparent, if you can mark against what we have and we can mark against what you have and show the original language, that's best.
Okay.
So if we can, you know, each just do a different color. You can't really do it with track changes as effectively, because what happened last time, and I think you know what happened, is I think what happened is Craig would accept something that your side would accept, but then it would no longer show as a change from the original document.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very problematic, because our end goal is to have a document that we can hand to city council saying, here are the changes from the last contract. They don't care who, you know, they're okay if they like the language, not if it's yours or mine or whatever.
Mhm.
They just want to know if it's changed. So it kind of got messed up, as you know, a number of times.
Mhm.
So if we can try to at least do it off the original language always,
Mhm.
and then if we can show the other's language, do that.
Okay.
That makes
Okay.
sense? And what we do is we take that original Word document, we just excerpt it out. That's not a word.
Yes.
And make its own document instead of, with police, we had done one huge document. That's difficult. We do it
It's
because
because
their
the person
attorney
whose
likes.
name will not be used.
Likes to do it that way.
Insist on doing it that way.
Yeah, it's very bulky, you're
And it's not
constantly.
Thomas.
No, it's
I think
not.
I think I knew who you were talking about.
No, and, yeah, I just think one at a time is
Okay.
easier.
So then, do you want us to caucus, and then I think in maybe by 3 or so, we can have some articles that y'all can start looking at, and we'll try to get those to you a little bit beforehand?
That would be great.
Bet.
We're on hold for a moment.
Just shut this off so I can get that.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. You're good.
Let me double check.
Let me now get everything in order.
We on? We're ready.
Yes. So we have about 8 articles, I count, 8 or 9, ready for y'all. If that's not exact. So while it's loading, the first article we wanted to talk about is Article 5. We generally agree that Article 1 through 4, there aren't any real changes. We just sometimes keep those definitions to the end. Although I think we could TA Article 4 pretty easily, non-discrimination. So in Article 5, this is union dues checkoffs. The only thing we really wanted to add is that the union actually created a digital form where it literally just filled in the blanks for the medics, and then they electronically sign, and then the city told us that they wouldn't accept that. A lot of our medics just don't easily have access to printers, and so we were just asking that the city either create a digital form or accept the digital form. The other issue with the paper form is it requires your whole social security number that then we're emailing through multiple different forums, and so when I talked to payroll, they were comfortable with either just the last 4 of the social security number or the employee ID, and so that's really clear on the digital form that I created, but the city said they won't accept it. So we're just asking the city to accept digital signatures or create their own digital form. I think it also creates a more cleaner paper trail. The other thing we wanted to add is we didn't really get an opportunity to talk about it a lot last year. Y'all added the indemnification clause, which we accepted. The only thing that we're asking to add this time is that it doesn't apply to offenses listed under Texas Penal Code 31.02, and that's just if there is some fraud, you know, just blatant stealing from the union dues by the city. We don't anticipate that ever happening, but we obviously should not indemnify the city for something like that. Do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, just any type of claims that stem from misappropriation of funds, mishandling of funds, those kinds of things would, I mean, it seems reasonable not to indemnify that. I mean, we already have certain coverage in that regard, but that's about it.
You bet, we'll take a look at that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
Jill?
can certainly see the potential logic of that report.
Yeah.
And it's probably a bonded exposure anyway.
So.
Take a look, let us know. Do you all have any other questions or comments about Article 5?
I don't believe so. Makes sense to me.
Just make sure I didn't skip one. Article 8, special leave. For the most part, we also just have cleanup on this. We had a few HR run-ins, encounters with this. So basically, the point of this article is that when somebody starts depleting their sick time, that other members can donate sick time to them. We had 2 interesting cases, which is why we are changing the language. One, she was taking care of a family member. It qualified for FEMLA, but because she herself was not injured, the city originally said that they couldn't get donated time. But we believe our intent, and the city, actually, the department, when we raised it up, agreed that it really was for any FEMLA qualifying event, not just for FEMLA qualifying events that only pertained to the person. So that's really the language that we're trying to clean up.
We're already working on that one.
Great. And the other issue that we had is that we recently experienced a case where somebody asked for donated leave and they were told to turn in FEMLA paperwork. And that's clearly not the intent of this article. It's only if it's a qualifying event, not that they actually had to turn in FEMLA paperwork. And so that's the only thing we're trying to accomplish with this. So the way we read it now is if an employee has used all but 168 hours of his or her available accrued time, vacation, sick, etc., due to a FEMLA qualifying event, whether FEMLA has been requested or not, other employees may donate the time. And it's specifically to the employee, and that way we can take out a sentence further down that says donated leave may only benefit or may only be used to the uniform staff to whom the leave was donated. We thought that that sentence was also confusing HR because it made it seem like that the person themselves had to be injured. And we have an evergreen request that separation pay will actually come down to year 5. And we also are asking for there to be no maximum accrued sick leave payout. The reason why we, obviously we always want when people separate that they get to keep the time that they earned while they were employed here. We think right now, because of our staffing shortage, what happens is people are calling out sick for a few months, exhausting their banks, and then separating and creating holes that we can't necessarily account for. And so it makes it more difficult for the department to understand how many trucks are going to be down every day. And it doesn't really allow us to adequately prepare for staffing.
And also, I just have a pet peeve with the use of will in contracts, and I prefer shall.
So you'll see a lot of that language
There's a lot
changed.
of cross out on there, so, just me.
Y'all have any specific questions on that? And we're very flexible with the sick leave donation language. To us, this reflects what the intent was when we created this article. But if y'all have other preferred language, we're very open.
Okay, I think we understand the request there.
Okay. Article 9. So in Article 9, in 2022, we also discussed a leave buyback program. We had it in for a year. The department did not implement the buyback. It was optional. So all we were asking for this time that they will implement the buyback program. Again, we have a lot of members that have a lot of sick time, a lot of vacation time. A lot of people don't want to use the benefit time because they do want to contribute to the department right now. When we are shutting down many ambulances, a lot of people are working a lot right now in order to fill those holes. And so we think that it actually would benefit the department if people could sell back their sick time, sell back their vacation time, if they have an excess, and it just allows them to stay on. Because I know people who, they have a huge amount of sick time, they're like, well, I might as well use it, but if they could actually trade it in for cash, then they would actually do that, and stay on the schedule. We also think this constitutes a cost savings to the department, because if instead of paying for somebody to come in on overtime at their 1.5 times their overtime rate, if you can pay the vacation or sick at their straight rate without having to pay somebody to come in, that is a cost savings.
We do have some fundamental differences in philosophy about sick leave and what its purpose is, as usual. But I think we understand the proposal and the request, and we also recognize the practicality of the cost of backfilling people.
Yeah, and we definitely want to come to a leave buyback program that works for both the department and for the association. So we're definitely open to any ideas that y'all have to make this a reality that can benefit both parties. Are there any questions or comments on that?
Don't think so.
Okay. Just making sure, I thought we, yeah. So Article 10 is association business leave. This request will look exactly like it did last year. We are asking at this time for the association vice president to be paid at halftime. I think that last year when we discussed it, there was the question of the cost and that it has to be backfilled, but regardless, any ABL hours that are used do need to be backfilled. I have had conversations with my chief about, you know, I feel like the association has taken on an increased workload, and that is obviously on us and has nothing to do with the city and the department in some respects. But it is a really high burden for me personally. And, you know, I can go into all the ways in which it is, but, you know, I was on vacation 2 weeks ago and I really didn't feel like I could really take that vacation, and I do feel like I really need to be on call all the time. And there are many times when we have disciplinary hearings or other types of events. For example, this week we had EMS rodeo, and we just don't have enough support because everybody is working a lot right now. And so if we had this support, it would be very helpful to us, and a lot of times it's things that benefit both the union and the department. If we scroll down, we've also had a little bit of conversation last year, and we are asking for the city to contribute an additional number of hours. Our membership has grown quite a bit, and so this is the 5,418 is a reflection of our staffing, and so we have that increase in hours, and that has not changed since 2018. So
The 4015?
4015 is from 2018, yes.
So on that one, when you say it reflects it, is that a matter of taking the staffing at that time versus this time and just changing the hours
Yeah,
incrementally?
this reflects full staffing. So
Full staffing,
we, you know, we don't think it should reflect the staffing today, and we haven't really been able to accurately predict what the staffing will be October. If that makes sense. Because we would want it to reflect the number of staff we have in
So
October.
this,
Okay,
the
understood.
5418 is the authorized staffing equivalent?
Yes, exactly.
And is
And-
that compared to are you utilizing full staffing for the first number?
The 4015 at 2018 was the staff that we had, that we would estimate in October.
Actual staff?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
But we don't have that estimate right now,
I
if
understand.
the department could
I
provide that.
understand. We're changing methodology, but the reason is it's unpredictable.
Yes. All right, any questions about that?
We're good?
Okay. Article 11, so shared communication between city and association. We historically have never, I don't think we've actually really addressed this article in a really, really long time. Most of it we have no concern with. The only thing recently, and I think this mostly has to do with the fact that we are constructing some new stations. All we are asking to, and we did have this question come up. I know that Chief Hopkins and the association have had this come up, but we weren't really sure who was responsible for providing the bulletin boards, or that, you know, we didn't really even have an inventory of which stations do have them and don't have them. And so, because they need to be very specific specification in order to go up, and also obviously the association can't just like tack on a board wherever we want. The department has historically taken on this responsibility, and I don't think would want the association to take that on and freestyle it. So we just added in language that the department shall provide the association bulletin boards in each workspace. And that's the only change we made in this language. Oh, excuse me. We did have one other change. we do find, and our members do find a lot of value in knowing where this department is headed. And so all we've asked is that the department will present to the association its strategic plan by the end of every year. And it's our understanding that there is one in the works, and so I know that it should be ready very, very soon. And so we would just like to provide some more backstop so that we know that one will come out, but we also know that this is something that the department is also already doing. And I think this just also, it serves to show how serious we are, that the union members want to know where our department leaders think this department is going, so that we can move all in the same direction and feel like we're moving together, and can also guide the actions of the department against the strategic plan.
Can I ask a quick
Yeah.
question there? And I'm not suggesting either way, just want to make clear what you're asking for. Are you suggesting that if they're working on one now, you get it December 31st? Are you, in this language, suggesting that a new one would have to be done each year, or you just get the current one at that time frame?
It's a very good question. We actually talked about the reasonable time in which to create a new one. I think what we were really thinking is that we hope that annually the department looks at the strategic plan and reassesses and potentially makes some changes or not, if that makes sense. So
But not trying to mandate it to be
exactly.
different.
I think it makes
Good one.
aspirational
Okay.
sense. I don't think I've ever been in an organization that did one timely. And so
Yes.
that's our only challenge.
Sure.
And
So
so we
maybe-
just need to know what we're actually committing to do. I don't want to frustrate your expectations if it's not done yet and it's going to be another 60 days, and then they say, well, here it is again, it's the same one you got last year. So,
And I think even if it was the same one, it would still provide an opportunity for us to reflect
Okay.
and to provide commentary. And, you know, this is also the first time we've ever we've asked for it to be placed in the contract. And so if it does seem redundant, you know, we can certainly address it later.
and if you get the same thing the following year, then presumably you're going to get with it. It'll probably be updated by February or something.
Right.
And it would
More
educate
information
any-
instead of less.
It would educate any new staff that are coming on during that time as well.
We'll explore that and see what's practical.
Absolutely.
Are there any other questions about this article?
Don't believe.
No.
So Article 14, I want to say that on the outset that I really appreciate all the work that council and the bargaining team last year did on this. I think that we made a tremendous amount of progress. So there are very, very few changes this year that we would like to see. I do think because the changes we've made was a really big change, all we're asking is that if any employees that do administer the reasonable suspicion test, that they just get trained on it, because in kind of scanning commanders, there's been kind of just patchy training on it. And so we're just trying to say, this is a big change, we recognize that, can we make sure that everybody is level set on it? Because it is very delicate. I do know that during this year, there was one interesting case where it was not handled appropriately, and so we're just trying to make sure that it is for everybody. Especially because it is of such a delicate nature, we don't want to intrude on anybody's personal medications and usage if it's not appropriate.
Okay.
Yeah, and when looking at the reasonable suspicion test, all of the indicating factors, or at least on a few of the different rungs for it, they're very subjective, whether it be, you know, being tired, being alert, being irritable. Every single one of these, you know, most of those also can be attributed to stress, anxiety, and PTSD, which is a commonly found occurrence among members as well. And so that's really kind of what leads us to want the training for it, to where we can differentiate between someone who may be tired from sleeping very few hours over, you know, several day period because of work, compared to those who are actually impaired due to substance.
Okay. That's not what that says.
The reasonable
This
suspicion.
is talking about testing, training to do the test, to administer the test,
The
not
reasonable
for the
sus-
reasonable suspicion portion
The
of it.
procedures do indicate the checklist, and so that's part of the training.
Yeah.
Okay, so if that's what you're trying to get at, we need to reword that
Sure.
if we agree to it.
Yeah,
'cause
I
that's
mean,
not
we
what
do
that
think it's
says.
both. It's the
Yeah.
process and also the appropriateness of the test.
Yeah.
Okay,
But
got
that,
it.
we put that all together, but if
Gotcha.
y'all need to
Yeah, we can
clarify
delineate
stuff,
that
yeah.
as well.
So let me see if I understand, because I think I do. What you're saying is that you want to make sure that everybody's trained, and that's actually the change that you're proposing.
Yes.
The reason that you feel like that's necessary is the underlying policy has, I think they're inherently subjective, frankly.
Yes.
I mean, if you're either doing a chemical assay or you're using subjective criteria to determine likelihood. And a combination of multiple factors gets you a higher level of probability of whether or not your reasonable suspicion gets there, even though it's less than probable cause.
Yeah.
And all we're really talking about is having a level of competency in what the standards are, and then achieving a higher level of consistency among the people that are applying the standard.
Yes, sir.
Did I mostly capture it?
And then there's one more, and also in the specific steps for the procedure.
Okay.
Because, for example, there was one case where there was a drug log discrepancy, and so only one substance was warranted to be tested for, and then all the substances were tested for.
Okay. I understand that logic. Thanks for the background.
So scrolling down, so as it stands right now, and we might want to wait until, I think Texas is kind of having these conversations right now. In session, but also just the state departments themselves are looking at different methods or forms of THC, and one of them is Delta 8, and it is currently legal right now. You can have Delta 8, you can go to the corner station and purchase it right now completely legally. It can be put into beverages. It is put into beverages. It is put into edibles. And really, drug tests can't distinguish between Delta 9, which is the illegal substance, and Delta 8. And, you know, we don't want any of our members to be fired for taking a substance that is federally legal right now. I'm not aware of a test that differentiates between the two, and so that might be something we need to investigate, but we just certainly wouldn't want somebody to be fired for something that is legal. We also think that right now, if you were to do a reasonable suspicion impairment test, if that person was truly impaired at work, I think that the consequences for that would stand regardless of what popped up in the drug test. And so until we can really determine what is actually federally legal versus what is commercially widely available, or until Texas decides that Delta 8 is illegal, at which point they will be gone from the grocery store shelves, this to us is the safest thing.
And also the reasoning for like changing in the CFR statute is 40.87 no longer lists any substances. And so 0.85 does. But as she was saying, right now Delta 8 and other hemp-derived THC products it's a matter at the legislature, but as of right now,
And so we probably
THC is
also,
THC.
if we certainly will conform the statutory reference to whatever is the appropriate reference, and probably should include language that the substantive successor statutory sections or subsections, so that we contemplate future amendments. I mean, wherever they end up being moved to, we don't want our contract to be ineffective because they moved the stuff.
Yeah.
Right. And I think the reason why we never listed all the specific controlled substances is because we do recognize that that might change federally, and we don't want the contract to be out of date. There might be some new drugs that they, control, and there might be some ones that they take off the classification list, so.
we could also make reference to the Texas Compassionate Use Program as well, just because that will continue to change as well.
Are there any
What
questions? or
statutory
comments?
reference location does that come from? Is that Health and Safety Code?
It is Health and Safety Code, I believe.
Okay.
Health and Safety Code, Chapter 487.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, Article 15, protected rights of uniformed staff. this is also this is just updating the language. So we did establish a disciplinary matrix committee, and we have been working through it. I think healthcare is really different than having a disciplinary matrix in EMS is really, really different than having one in APD and having one in any other public safety agency, because we stand at that intersection between healthcare and public safety. There is a really big emphasis on things like just culture, because in the hospitals, they're very, very clear about using just culture because we want to make sure that we're bringing up medication errors, any potential errors, so that we can make sure that patients are safe and that we are catching things. And if people are afraid that that they'll be very, very harshly disciplined, then they won't bring those things up, and we can't improve patient safety. And so all that is to say, that is why we've had a really hard time coming up with one, because we're really trying to blend the two, and they honestly don't blend that well together. We started out basically with APD's discipline matrix, just a lot of the concepts in that, and we're trying to infuse it with just culture, and it is frankly very difficult.
Could you give me some examples, because I'm not really seeing how that works?
I mean, really in just culture, there's no discipline. Because it says that people are all trying their best, and that any errors that they make is something that the whole system should look at. So, if they accidentally provide too much medication, maybe the protocols need to be a little bit more clear and more readable. Maybe we need to reinforce medication cross-track and make sure that all of our medics are doing that appropriately.
So how do you deal with medical negligence in the context of a place where there are no standards and there's no discipline? Because the city's gonna get sued for things that your members do negligently or wrong, and the plaintiff's gonna prove that the city can't make anybody change because it's all a matter of everybody's opinion changes every day.
Yeah, and so when I'm talking about healthcare, for example, I don't know how they do it at unionized healthcare sites in Texas, because we have the whole disciplinary process. I think it's different, because I can tell you in the hospitals, I don't know what procedure they go through. I don't know what types of policies they go through, but certainly people do lose their jobs for extreme negligence. It's just what is written down on paper in just culture. They don't really kind of go through that, and really they have these flow charts, and so there have to be a lot of things. Like basically you have to be willful in order for there to be discipline.
So the city's liability standard is ordinary medical negligence in the use of tangible personal property. What you're saying is your members are not accountable for that, and the city has to pay for it.
I don't think that's what was said.
We're not really going that far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when we discuss having a disciplinary matrix, we have to understand the exact nature of what EMS is providing. The city obviously has its situation with its liability and does a very good job at handling that and doing away with it as they can. But what we're discussing is that there needs to be, that it is not just like with APD, that there are certain things that are going to go on with that. They have to understand that the nature of the work of EMS is going to be different from that. It does come with that cross
Just put that in the context, Houston, of you're the plaintiff's lawyer, you're deposing the chief. How many people have you fired for violating this standard of care for the patient? None. Why not? I can't fire anybody.
Well,
Because
we
the union
can also
contract
ask that
says
of,
that I can't fire anybody.
But we could also ask that of any other public employee who hasn't been fired.
But I
for
litigate
those
this in
policies.
police cases, exactly the same issue, where the plaintiff's lawyers are saying, in cases I've got, your disciplinary matrix prevents you from terminating or seriously disciplining police officers unless they are virtually on purpose.
What is your solution that you were offering?
I'm not yet. I'm just trying to understand.
Because
So we have not
what the
taken out.
issues are.
We have not taken out. No, there are no issues. The only reason why I discuss this is the reason why we've not completed the disciplinary matrix.
And don't misunderstand, I'm not even disagreeing with you. I'm just trying to understand how it could work so that the city could responsibly take disciplinary action. And in the police context, it's not just disciplinary action, it's discipline, educational alternatives, changing and modifying our policies. It's a whole collection of things to accomplish the right outcome for a patient, which is your objective.
Yes, and that's what we're trying to figure out, and we're saying it's not that easy, so we're taking some more time with it.
And not wanting it to be in a position where it could be arbitrary when it
Sure.
comes to disciplinary. To
So-
have the disciplinary matrix is in order to avoid anything that would be considered arbitrary for when one person does one thing, is not punished, and the other one does the same. It is not trying to pass any liability onto the city. That's not what this is about. It is about trying to find fairness within a disciplinary process that in the past has not always been as fair and has had more arbitrary actions. And so that is really what we're trying to get at.
So all I did, and all that was to say, is that we did not finish it in a year, so we can't remove this section. And so we're just adjusting it because we already did establish the committee. And so all this is saying is that we're continuing the work, and that because we already are putting it into the contract, we would like to review it annually, since now we have established it.
Okay. Thanks for the engagement on that.
And we never took out anything about how the chief can deviate from the penalty ranges, so regardless, we
Correct.
can't grieve. He can make those changes, and we wouldn't be able to point to the disciplinary matrix because it is within our contract that they can deviate from it.
And he can still disregard the recommendations of the committee to make his own matrix.
Yeah.
That's not removed or anything, right?
Correct.
He still has sole discretion at the end.
Any other comments or questions?
That's all I've got on that one.
Article 18, significant schedule changes. We did add some language here. So, as we know, we have been working very closely with the department about how much overtime is mandatory within our department. There is an ugly side to that, which is that if we can't force more people to come into work, we will have ambulances that we don't staff. We think that in transparency, because a lot of our medics don't know which ambulances are staffed that day, we don't know how many people have been called in, how many people remain on the on-call list, how many people are off for whatever reason. We're not asking to disclose the specific names, but we are just asking for a daily report so that we have this information. A daily report like this is already generated by scheduling, and so all it would need is to get those specific names removed and then sent out to the staff. And that just helps us be a little bit more empowered when we're on shift. If I know that my neighboring ambulance is down, then I can anticipate that I'm gonna be a little busier. I'm going to put all my food on the ambulance. I'm gonna make adjustments in my expectations for that shift. And all our medics are really asking for is transparency in this case. We also think that the city should know when these things are happening, because a lot of it just has to do with the fact that we are very, very understaffed right now. And we think that the city residents deserve that information.
So let me ask you about that, because I'm not the least bit familiar with the way this currently works from
Sure.
logistics. In the old days, I used to know actually quite well the way it worked in the fire department, because we went over there to Station 1 off of 5th Street or whatever it is, and actually showed up in the morning and watched them go through the whole thing so we could write the contract. My recollection from that was most of this information wasn't even final, hadn't settled until like 11 o'clock in the morning, even though their shift started at 7 or something. And so is this real-time information that's available, and are you asking to have it as you go to work? Does it exist at that point in time?
It's variable.
Okay. All right, that's all I really need.
Yeah.
Okay.
We do know that scheduling does send out an email to executive with that information every day.
But maybe not as early as you're talking about having it, so you could
No, but
adjust your approach to work.
I start at 10, even if I had it by 11, that would be helpful for the next 23 hours.
All right. We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
Hopefully I'll get smarter about it.
We also recognize that the way that we run ambulances is dynamic, and that at any given time, we might need to adjust some rules that we have pertaining to how we schedule folks. But obviously, where you work that day, who all is working, is going to have the biggest factor on your working life that day. And what happens is this has happened to me many times. We have a set of scheduling rules. Of course, we could ask those rules to be placed in the contract, but that doesn't make sense because we know that they need to be updated more frequently than every 3-4 years. And since you guys are not on ambulances, most of you, all of you, so for example, if you're on call, sometimes you're called in for one type of ambulance, sometimes you're called in for another type of ambulance, sometimes you're given options, sometimes you aren't. And so it is nice to know that, well, I'm third up and I know that I'm gonna be given these options. And so we've asked the department to come up with scheduling rules. We do have those. Recently, they have been changing quite a bit, but the field has not been notified. And so what it feels like is that the rules change and nobody is notified. And so then, you know, a medic calls in expecting one thing and then they find out that the rules have changed. So we are not asking for any necessarily, I mean, we obviously wish, and I do think that we've collaborated really well with the department to provide feedback on the changes. All we were asking that if the rules changed, that they be reflected in the scheduling rules documents, which does live online. And so it just says, any proposed rule change pertaining to scheduling shall be made available to employees review prior to their implementation. And currently, we're making changes and we're not actually informing employees. And I can give you a specific example. We have some ambulances that are on a 12-hour schedule, and for a long time, you couldn't work the back half of those. We recently changed it that you can, but that rule has never been announced. And so a lot of people, they were under the impression that they couldn't go back, and they felt like they were being coerced into doing something that was not up until now previously allowed. And so it feels like an invasive subterfuge measure when I have known about the change, but not everybody else. And I only know because, you know, I meet with executive quite frequently. Do you all have any questions on that or comments?
I'm sure I will, but at this point, I think I probably know all I could know.
The last article we have for y'all today is grievance procedure. And so the first two of these are just grammatical errors. We had disputed, we should have disputes. I think we just haven't really looked over this in a really long time. And then insure instead of insures. The only substantive thing that we really changed
Let's
is...
look at that one real quick.
Sure.
Where's that?
Oh, it's just at the top. It
Oh, yes, I got you.
kind of throughout the document, you'll see
Right.
random things like that.
Somebody actually paid attention to where the computer had underlined the word.
Exactly. So the only substantive change we made is with Chief Lukritz, what we realized is we have had a few grievances, and it is appropriate for the department to respond with, we've received the grievance. And then this article does not require an actual resolution. All it does is say that if we don't respond, then we agree that that there is no grievance. And it doesn't say anything about if the city basically stops responding to us. And so we did put an ending in here, that if the city stops substantially responding to us, that we assume that it is resolved in favor of our proposal. In fact, this has happened a few times where the city has stopped responding to us, and they have actually just said, well, it's because we agree with you. If, you know, there is a time when y'all don't, we do expect a response about the fact that y'all disagree with the grievance. But there have been times where you can see our correspondence just dies, and there does not ever seem like there is resolution on certain grievances.
And this would, we believe it just adds a bit of parity in that if we miss a deadline, it goes against us, which we would see, you know, would relate to if in turn the department misses a deadline, then the same should apply.
And that is the only change we made in this article.
So we don't have articles prepared for exchange and review today. We do want to give you a little bit of kind of an overview of a couple of our key areas. And it's our intention to get these and other articles to you if possible between now and the next session, and early enough for you to have team discussion and preparation. That's a point you made earlier today as we went over ground rules and so forth. And so the promotions article, we had asked for appointment of division chiefs the last time. That remains a high priority for us and will be a part of our proposal this time. We also want to have more flexibility in the testing process for promotions on the criterion. It's currently 6 years, I believe, I was told, 6 years, and clinical specialist for 2 years. And we're looking at adjustment or change to that to make it a little bit less than that so that the career ladder could proceed at a more rapid pace. The next thing is on I'm also was learning about the way the ranks work. That would be for captain and commander. And simultaneously, I think you're already aware, and I think we actually had some discussions the last time about back pay cost and liability and how the back pay structure works. And so the city needs to save some money there. Frankly, feels like that there's some windfall payments being there that, you know, are not necessary for fairness. On the other hand, there's a fairness component there for somebody. So we want to make sure that that's structured to where some people just don't win the lottery, so to speak, in terms of when they get promoted and get large dollars on back pay for not doing a job that they weren't promoted to do. And there's some complication there. Frankly, I don't remember what y'all's perspective was on that, but I think that there was some common ground about how we could deal with that. And the way we're thinking about it is we're thinking about not taking those dollars and using them for something else, but putting them into compensation for your personnel overall. So did I get that right? Pretty close?
Pretty close.
All right. On the hiring article, we are interested in direct hire from lateral so that we can continue our commitment and effort for enhancing staffing and so forth. And that would be for communications as well as field positions. And we want to try to see what we can do to facilitate a less cumbersome situation between crossing back and forth between field and communications, so that you don't have to take a demotion, in order to move over into the other silo, so to speak. So those are the things that kind of are our top priorities that we'll be working on. We'll be going through the items that you've given us and other articles that we're trying to decide what we want to change and what's important for this cycle. But we do plan to get you things to where you can be ready for that next meeting, which I think is going to be what? May 1?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's great, and I think, obviously we presented a lot of ours on our end, and I think we did a lot of work in 2022, so a lot of the requests that we have are not really asking the department to make a big change monetarily or otherwise, but mostly just, you'll see a lot of things are about transparency and just informing our medics and, making sure that we have the association boards up. So a lot of them seem very, pretty superficial. I think the articles that we've held back, obviously we have our wages and benefits, overtime.
That's no surprise.
Yeah. But we've also held back hiring and promotions because we definitely think that we understand the staffing issues we have, and our medics obviously see value in doing whatever we can to improving that situation and also making promoting easier, et cetera. So I think we'll have a lot of shared ground and a lot of positive tweaks for the next contract.
Excellent.
Okay.
And we did send over a list of dates back.
And those were all from ours, so those are all good?
Yes.
I guess we can announce those publicly if I have them handy, or if you do. Got it. Okay, so we're talking May 1st, May 3rd, May 12th, May 16th, May 17th, June 9th, June 12th, June 27th, and June 29th. I would add that as we move forward, we may have some more dates free up, kind of depending on the fire arbitration, as you're
Yeah.
aware of. And if that happens, I'll let you know, and maybe we can insert some additional dates
Okay.
in between there. It's just kind of a busy time.
Yes, I totally,
Yeah,
I, we
but
were,
we
we
don't
were,
wanna
we
put
were
you on the,
shooting.
we do
were-
not
yeah.
wanna put you on the back burner. We had
Yeah.
discussed this ahead of time. It's
Yeah.
just, yeah.
Yeah, we were shooting for that, you know, we would have your undivided attention, but,
Yes, ma'am.
you
I
know, I
know.
should have known better.
You have it. In the meantime, if you have any further questions on the ground rules, feel free to, you know, you or Houston, pick up the
Okay.
phone, give either of us a call.
Absolutely.
That's absolutely fine with us, and
Yeah.
We really appreciate those open lines of communication, and being upfront and,
Yeah.
you know, trying to make sure that we're as forthright with one another as possible throughout this process.
Yeah.
And we do hope that by the next session, we can also make headways in some of the other articles that we haven't prepared. But if y'all want to take a first stab at some of them, just let me know, and so then we won't, you know, get cross-wired on those. Because I think the other thing that we really learned from last time is there were times where we would meet, but we really didn't have any articles to trade.
Yeah.
And given where our staffing is and everything, you know, we would just rather cancel that and go back. So if there is a time that y'all know that, you know, you won't have any articles returned to us, just, we can try to cancel it earlier.
yeah, so as you can tell from what Lowell said, our main focus is gonna be hiring and promotions, which is what we'll have for you next time, in
Okay,
addition
great.
to responses.
Okay.
So we really, you know, the other articles that are kind of hanging out there are just hanging, they're not things that we have really anything coming up big on, so that's what you'll have.
So if that means the wages
Yeah.
articles,
Just
y'all just
hanging out
wanna agree
there.
with us, that's awesome. That's
Yeah,
what-
we'll leave
I
it
think that's
status
what I took
quo.
from that.
Yeah, you heard
And
me say we'll
public
leave it
heard
as is.
So, you know, we're agreeing with us, that's awesome.
I've just never seen an association come forward and propose a pay cut article like you did.
Well,
Never know, you never know. And we do have, I think we're arranging for the city manager to come in during the next meeting.
On the 1st.
Yeah, I'm still confirming that, but that looked like that was gonna be the best.
Okay.
So I will let you know in the meantime once that's confirmed.
Perfect. Okay. Thank y'all so much.
Thank
Sure.
y'all very much. Have a good day. Nice start. Nice to meet the new folks.
nice to be met.